The science fiction hilarity of Rick and Morty finally comes together with the fantasy madness of Dungeons & Dragons in Rick and Morty vs. Dungeons & Dragons issue number 1. But is this two great tastes that taste great together a la a Reese's Cup, or is this one of those bad verses? You know the ones. Let's find out together, shall we, as we hop on in. So, as we join the comic, Morty is noticing what I feel a lot of people are probably noticing in 2018, and that is, man, tabletop gaming, including Dungeons & Dragons, is getting really popular again. And not even just your regular grab bag of stereotypical nerds, outcasts, and loners. No, actual regular everyday people are getting involved in role-playing, including pretty girls that Morty is of course interested in. What might be causing the uptake in interest? Lots of things, but because this book is actually done with the involvement of Wizards of the Coast, they're actually able to name drop some of the more important and relevant Dungeons & Dragons podcasts. You got your Critical Role with Matt Mercer and all of his voice actor friends, you got your Adventure Zone with all your McElroy brothers, you even got your Acquisitions Incorporated. And if all of that just sounded like gibberish to you right now, then you are gonna hate the rest of this comic, because I promise it only gets nerdier from here. Morty ends up going to his first game shop, and there he ends up greatly overestimating his D&D abilities to the store clerk, who invites him to a game being held at the store on Saturday. This means Morty has precious little time to learn and master a fantasy role-playing system. Oh, and did I mention he makes the very first-timer mistake of grabbing a first edition handbook, thinking to himself, oh, first edition, I guess I'll just start at the beginning. Morty racks his brain trying to figure out the intricacies of this game, and trust me, I've been there myself when I first started, so I can really relate to this scene. When that doesn't work, Morty decides that he'll just cheat by asking Grandpa Rick for help. Now you would think Rick Sanchez, smartest man in the multiverse, would be a jerk about this because, well, he's a jerk about pretty much everything else. Only surprise twist for you, Rick loves Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, he's a bona fide Gygaxian. He's been playing the game since day one. And hey, you know what? For once in his life, Morty is just kind of making his grandpa disappointed instead of really making his grandpa disappointed. Why, Rick even lets Morty sit in on his old man game. Where, of course, because this is first edition, it's wildly unfair to Morty, and he ends up dying over and over and over again. But hey, as far as Rick is concerned, learning that first edition isn't really worth it is all an important milestone in learning Dungeons & Dragons, and with that, he upgrades Morty to Edition 2. But again, because this is portal gun swinging Rick here we're dealing with, he's not going to break out some graph paper and dry erase markers. Oh no, he takes his grandson to Blitz and Chips, where in another great shout out to the Rick and Morty series, Rick goes out of his way to rewire the Roy machine to turn it into a fantasy simulator. Morty rolls up a brand new paladin character, while Rick of course chooses to play the wizard because, well, the company that makes Dungeons & Dragons is called Wizard of the Coast, and wizards have like a dozen subclasses. They take a job at a local town to deal with some zombies. At first, everything is going pretty good. That is, of course, until Morty learns about a little thing called critical failures. Meaning that if you roll a 1, you can botch it so bad that you'll actually stab one of your allies, which Morty does, seemingly killing his grandpa and leaving them at the mercy of the ghouls. It would seem that they're totally screwed inside the game, but wouldn't you know it, they're screwed outside the game too, because Blitz and Shit's staff ends up coming in and unplugging their machine, which might just fry their brains and kill them. So that was Rick and Morty versus Dungeons & Dragons, everybody, and if you couldn't tell, I enjoyed this story quite a bit. Jim Zub is perfectly suited for the material. After all, he's an uber nerd who writes superhero comics and the Dungeons & Dragons comic, which means he can both walk the walk, talk the talk, roll the D20s, and make you laugh while doing it. Is this a very niche crossover? Oh, 100%, but if you like all those Dungeons & Dragons podcasts that they mentioned here in this comic, or if you're just interested in picking up Dungeons & Dragons through the lens of Rick and Morty, this comic actually ends up being pretty damn educational, I felt. Honestly, of all the great references that grace issue 1, I'm surprised that they didn't drop a reference to Harmon Quest, considering that Dan Harmon, one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty, has a D&D show. Overall, I dug this one. I would give it an 8 out of 10. I certainly enjoyed it. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out some of these other videos I have available from the channel. Then you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Cape Joel, so you're always up to speed on what I'm doing next. And hey, if you're in the market for some comic book trades of your own, might I recommend using my book depository link down in the description. Not only will you get an amazing deal by not having to pay any shipping and handling, but everything you buy via my specific link actually goes to support me in the channel. So you win, I win, everybody wins, right? What's not to love? And until next time, everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I will be back again with more comic content that smacks of greatness. Bye-bye, everyone.